Now we're live from downtown Mill Bay. Okay. Abigail. Ah, I don't think. Jonathan, I am missing this sheet from you. Right, I should open up who's actually here. Abigail's not here. Ashley Verapin. She's not in the course anymore. Uh, thank you. Lucia, I am also missing this sheet from you. And Yvonne, I am missing this sheet. Yeah, that one. Did you put it with the other sheets? Did you tell me at the time? Oh, it's still there. Thank you. Okay, we'll get to those in a moment. Okay, anybody still ready? Everybody done? Excellent. Put laptops away. Take out notes. Now we will start argument. Talked a little bit about correlation and causation last day. The number of cheese that you've eaten versus the amount that people have been strangled by bed sheets. And good arguments and bad arguments. The first part to picking apart an argument, or literally dissecting it, is recognizing that they have two parts. The conclusion is the claim, the part that you're saying is true or false. And then the premise is the reasons for supporting that conclusion. So pull down the terminology, because we're going to start evaluating these arguments. So what we're calling the claim, and for like our purpose, if someone says they have an opinion, a view, a thought, belief, I have a strong conviction, I have an idea, those are all claims. And they're either supported, they have a premise that supports their conclusion, or they're unsupported. So we tend to use opinion sometimes to mean something that's completely unsupported. That's just my opinion, man. But many times we have good reasons for our opinions. So we have to take a look to see, is it an actual argument? Actual arguments have supports for their claims. Because the first part before picking out bad arguments is, can you identify an argument at all? Where is it? There it is. One of the things that we're going to be doing at some point in time is diagramming arguments. So if I have a premise, 1, and a conclusion, 2, we would show that by saying 1 goes to 2. And that's a diagramming method you'll see in a lot of logic textbooks, in which we will take arguments. There's some other hatching to show things that don't support in that, but for right now it's just circles, numbers, and arrows to show that, okay, this is our premise, and this is our conclusion. And 1 supports 2. In thinking about arguments, I'm going to call up Class Dojo here. And Tedra. Where's Tedra? Hold it. I already said that in attendance, and now I've given her the point. I have to take that back. Yvonne. My voice cracked there. I must be going through my second puberty. Yvonne, how many conclusions can one premise support? In your experience with arguments, how many conclusions can come out of a single fact? Yeah, many. How many facts? If you can get more than one conclusion out of an argument, how can you have more than one premise for a single conclusion? You can have both of those situations. And the latter one is probably the easiest one. There are conclusions that are supported by multiple facts. But there are also facts that support multiple different conclusions. You can use the same fact in different ways. And so when we're looking for this in a diagramming perspective, I'm going to put this on the next page because I think it has a bit more room. Nope. There. Is that if I have, for example, I got to do it on here. If I have a conclusion, I have a premise, it can go to a conclusion, and I can go to a different conclusion. Those are both conclusions. And those are both premises. And this is a hand. I'm not going to call anybody for this, but can you think of an argument in which it has one premise but two conclusions? Yes. Those are two different conclusions, and one of them is wrong. I leave it up to you as to which one is. But what I want is a single fact that goes to more than one conclusion, and all the conclusions can be true. So not just that people, so I'm glad you asked that and came up with that example because I hadn't thought of that. There are many things where people take the same facts and come to erroneous conclusions. I'm talking about one fact and you get multiple conclusions, all of which are true or could be true. Yep. Mm-hmm. Give me an example of a person it would be good for. Because you like it? Good for taste? And then you can also say bad for health. I heard someone say. Yeah, that can work. Another way of saying this, it might be a better way of phrasing this, is that you can learn something, a fact, and then immediately know that there are 2 or 3 things you have to do. All of them important, all of them conclusions from that fact. Oh, you weren't putting up, you were just going like this, like some sort of supervillain. Sure. So they're malnourished. Our society used to have a sugar deficit, for example. It's known as the calorie deficit. The invention of jam was a huge leap forward, apparently, because it added a way to put more calories into their winter diet. We've now extended jam to things like gummy bears and chocolate bars and everything, and now we have a calorie surplus. But certainly there are situations in which it could be good. I think an example that I saw. Oops. Undo that. I meant to do this one because I just wanted to move that a little bit, or at least shrink it. And it was one in which someone had a health condition, and that immediately meant, they have to get it immediately treated, and they need to go in for long-term treatment. They have got two conclusions, two separate things that they have to do. And so you can have more than one conclusion out of an argument. Some of them, we're going to get in a moment, some of them times they can be explanations. And then lots of premises for one conclusion that's very common in science. You want to have multiple supporting pieces of evidence for a particular theory or conclusion that you have. The more pieces of evidence you have, the stronger it is. Going back to here, we want to recognize some of these arguments. So when you read them, you should be able to pick out two parts, and they can occur in any order, because English is annoying. It was not constructed by someone with an eye for logical detail in mind. In fact, according to at least one English teacher at this school, English is not a true language. It is a bunch of other languages dressed up in a trench coat, wandering around pretending to be one language. Because we don't have hard and fast rules for any particular thing, not even plurality. So we need at least two claims, and you should be able to put mentally the word therefore between one of the claims. At least one of the claims must support the other claim being true. Cafeteria food tastes great, therefore we should get early lunch. Sorry, didn't mean to move that. Now, often the word therefore is missing. Therefore is a magic word. What does therefore indicate? A premise or a conclusion? A conclusion. Now, with that, there's the word because. What does because indicate? Yes? Or were you just wiping your brow? Because of this, yeah. But is the word because, is what comes after the word because a premise or a conclusion? If I say cafeteria tastes great because we should get early lunch, or does it make more sense to say we should get early lunch because cafeteria food tastes great? Premise, yeah. So that we're going to do premise and conclusion indicators later, but this is really helpful because that's a premise indicator. So when you're trying to piece together arguments, I find mentally putting therefore in helps me indicate the conclusion. If I can't do that, I try putting because in and see if it still makes sense. And if it doesn't, put it in the other spot and see if it makes sense now. We should get early lunch because cafeteria food tastes great. Makes a lot more sense. So the premise is the claim that supports the conclusion. The conclusion is the claim that is proposed as true. That's true. We don't always get the word therefore or because. People like to use things like semicolons or just word things poorly because it's the English language. If you go on in logic, one of the greatest things you can do is take a paragraph and turn it into math. And then you never have to use words at all. It's wonderful. Yes? Pardon? So the word claim means anything that you're saying that is true. You're making a claim. A statement, an opinion. So when we, on the back previous slide, the part that you're saying is true is the claim, and examples, opinions, views, thoughts, beliefs, convictions, and ideas are all claims. Claims about reality. Now, sometimes what people say are not claims, but they may not tell you that. And they may accept them as claims, and they'll say, look, I'm not arguing, I'm not actually even supporting it, I just believe this, it's not a claim, and then that's fine. It's often very similar to what happens. I'll be listening to a story from my spouse, and I've come up with a great day. They are explaining their problem. I say, wow, I see a solution to that problem, and I tell them immediately what they should do. That is not the purpose of that conversation. They are not making a series of claims, and they don't want to hear any solutions. They are telling me about their day. We're going to take most things as claims, because that's the purpose of the course. Oops, we were there, and then you asked the question, I went back. Does anybody still need this down? Does anybody not have premise or conclusion written down? Are you good? Good. Okay. So, jumping ahead. What is wrong? One of these, for example, is an argument. One of these is not. And they look exactly the same in many respects. Yes. Yep. And then, well, you're saying she is sweating is the conclusion. No. Both of these are perfectly acceptable sentences. They're okay. Hold it. Why is this not? Sorry, my pen is doing something weird. There we go. So you're absolutely right. That is a premise, which means this has to be the conclusion. So if you saw someone sweating, might you conclude that they were working out? And you said there could be other things they're doing. That's very true. This is what's known as an inductive argument. You have limited evidence. They haven't said they were working out, but you see someone sweating, you're like, oh, they must have gone to the gym. You made a conclusion. So we've got a premise and a conclusion. Is that an argument? Yeah, that's an argument. Premise, conclusion, we could call this 1 to 2, and it would look like this. And so this is an argument. Hold it. How did I number them? Oh, I just happened to number this one 1. So I numbered it, the first one 2 and the second one 1. Oh, I see what you, yeah. How did I do that? Excellent. There. That fixes everything. And that will not be confusing at all. Especially if someone's not here and just listening to the crackling sound of the microphone. Well pointed out. Now here we have another premise indicator. So this one has to be the premise. She is sweating because she just finished working out. Does it make sense to say she just finished working out, therefore she is sweating? It does kind of make sense. However, the hint is this is not an argument. This is something completely different that looks like an argument. It's the same problem my son has with this. He's 11, and I'll say, clean your room because your books are all over the floor and there's dirty laundry everywhere. And then he says, no, there's only a couple books and the laundry is fine. And then I say, you're confused. That wasn't an argument. It's a statement. It's a very particular kind of statement. This is a statement. It's the same kind of statement we give all the time for things. You were in Science 10 this year, and did you do the Bohr model in grade 9? Some of you did? And if I say the electron always starts off at 2 in the first shell and 8 in the next shell, because it starts with the lowest energy level, I have also not given an argument. What am I giving? Pardon? I'm giving a factual statement. I did use the word because. There are things that use the word because that aren't that. When a student comes in and I say, why you're late? And they say, I was on the way to school, but I had to stop because I saw a dolphin being attacked by a group of bikers. So I went down and fought off the bikers with their own bikes and then rescued the dolphin that they had wrapped up in chains. They're actually not giving me an argument. It's a reason. These are reasons or explanations. They're not there. You can disbelieve someone's explanation. But if someone says, if I say, hey, I'm sweating because I just finished working out, I'm not telling you an argument in any way whatsoever. You can disbelieve me if you like, but that's my explanation. Explanations are not arguments. They're difficult to tell apart sometimes because they both use the same words. They use therefore. They use the word because. But explanations are more usually prosaic. They seem really obvious. She is sweating because she just working out. No one's gathering evidence and making a conclusion. It's like, hey, she's sweating because she just finished working out. I'm giving you my explanation. But when it's reversed and says she just finished working out because she is sweating, this feels more like I'm gathering evidence. I've seen this person, they're sweating. I have made a conclusion. She must have been working out. Why did you fail the breathalyzer test? Oh, I had a mint candy just before that's an explanation. You can fail a breathalyzer test due to mint. Mint and menthol, if you use mouthwash or anything, can cause you to fail one. You can fail a drug test because you eat a poppy seed bagel. Yep. Yep. Because all the breathalyzer is testing for something that reacts with it, and the most common one that reacts is an alcohol. But there are other alcohol type classifications that aren't ethanol, drinking alcohol, that will also react with it. So there are foods that can do that. So you can offer an explanation. If I said, you failed the breathalyzer because you were drinking at the dance, I am making an argument. I have taken some evidence and I have proposed a conclusion. Yes.
So, like, if it was like a Saturday night and like the people in the house,
Everybody has one. Usually what you do is you wait a period of time and retest. Yeah, because it doesn't last as long as ethanol does in your system. And so you can usually find out by waiting. If you were not in a house, but say pulled over for drinking and driving, I believe you can demand an actual blood test, which is more exact and would then show the result. Yeah. Yeah. One of the problems with things like, I think the U.S. has a lot more of this. I think it's illegal to do in Canada, except for very specific circumstances. But drug testing for your job, like a lot of job requirements say, we're allowed to drug test you randomly every week. You can fail the poppy test because you like poppy seed bagels and never know why. They'll just fire you for it and not tell you, or not hire you if you have to take a drug test beforehand. Yeah. Could be, because a lot of these do depend on context. So the context in my head, and thank you for asking the question then, is I'm a house parent, and I've just breathalyzed you. And you failed it. And I'm like, you drank at the dance. That's my conclusion based on the evidence. And you're like, no, my explanation is I had some kombucha just beforehand. Trust me. I did have a student, Privet House also has a breathalyzer. Because of COVID, I haven't used it very often. Breathing into tubes over and over again by multiple students seems to be a bad idea in the middle of a pandemic. But a student wanted to see if they could fail it. So without telling me, they actually just went and did some mouthwash and then blew like a really high number. I'm like, hey, like you've been drinking. And they're like, no, I just did mouthwash. I'm like, okay, you just played yourself because you now have to sit here and wait the half an hour so we can retest you. And we do have to tell Mr. Sullivan, it was Mr. Felix at the time, but his equivalent, and then deal with this whole thing. And then probably nothing will happen because that's what you did. So you just sit and spend this entire Saturday night waiting to get retested and then talking. Oh, I don't know that it wasn't. He said he did. There are, as someone once put, there's multiple reasons why you may fail it. He could have drank something and then did mouthwash to cover up the fact that he was drinking. The worst thing in Privet, not the worst thing, but when a student comes to me in Privet and says, I've had money stolen, my first suspect is them. Yeah. Them, like the person reporting the money being stolen. They steal their own money. As a house parent, they steal their own money because then they call their parents and they say, Mr. Neufeld, my money was stolen in the house, Mom. Please send me another allowance. I found that out that a boy did that regularly. Like, we had this huge theft problem. His brother, after he graduated, his younger brother was like, yeah, he did that all the time. I knew about it. And I'm like, ugh. And then everybody always, so here's the two explanations for that particular sentence. I don't ever have all the evidence. I have to consider the fact that the person might be lying. They may say that, oh, it's so-and-so because they know my combination, but the most common person in my experience is your roommate or best friend. Best friends steal other best friends' stuff all the time. That's the most common person. They know your locker combination, and it's a habit that they picked up, and you don't know that they do it. And I think that's the worst thing. And this is completely irrelevant to this, so I will stop talking about it. Yes? Oh, yeah. Yeah, like a strong menthol gum? Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, just eating food can throw it off. You have to make sure you haven't eaten food like 5-10 minutes beforehand. Oh, if you're but that's like you're going through ketosis at that point. So you haven't had food for a while. So as long as you had a previous meal, you're okay. But if you've been like fasting all day, that could throw it off too. Yeah, there's lots of reasons why you can fail a drug breathalyzer that aren't that you've been drinking. And if you've been undergoing ketosis and you weren't dieting, you've actually just uncovered a very a serious health condition. Yeah. Yep. Might be. You I have to add, first of all, I am not a lawyer. So I believe you're allowed to request a blood test to prove it. However, in Canada, you can also fail simply for being impaired. It actually doesn't matter what you're under the influence of. So the officer may go fine and then give you a dexterity test, walk backwards while counting to 10 type thing that they do to see if you're impaired. You fail that, it doesn't matter the reason. You could just be too tired. If you're too tired, you're driving while impaired. If you've been fasting and you're not thinking straight, if you are eating while driving and you're distracted while eating, you can also fail for that reason. Impaired in Canada is very broad. Alcohol is the easiest way to test for it, but if you were in that state for a different reason, so if you've just been fasting, and you're alert and fine, and you get and you test positive, I believe you can ask for a blood test. I don't know that for sure, and certainly once you fail the breathalyzer, it might be something you sort out after they arrest you. You may need to call a lawyer. Pardon? No, not if you don't get convicted. Yeah. It's also time for a use of a life lesson. If you are arrested, what should you tell the police? Absolutely nothing. And nothing you say has to be used for you. So if in court you're like, but I said this, didn't I? The police do not have to say that you said that, even if it would work for your benefit. They are only required to use things against you, not for you. That's not their job. Their job is to convict you if you're guilty. Well, yeah, but people lie all the time, so they don't have to bring up all the positive things you said. That'd just be weird. That's what your lawyer's for, yeah. Police are allowed to lie. Not on the stand, to you. So, or whatever, you can just affirm. But for example, Michael was next, so I'll get to you. A young person was brought into the station. He was accused of murder. He saw boxes of evidence with his name on it. As he walked in, the police officers accidentally dropped some files right in front of him, and it had the DNA evidence in there. It was quite obvious that his DNA matched the murder scene. And they quickly gathered it up, said, you shouldn't see that, sat him down, and offered him a choice. Now, this is in the States, but the law is the same in Canada. And they said, look, either you're going to be going to as in a state with capital punishment, either you're going to be tried with the death sentence on the table, or you can confess to the crime and we'll take the death sentence off the table. So he confessed to a crime that he did not commit, and we know that later. All those boxes of evidence were empty. They were just filled with random binders, so they didn't have evidence, and the DNA evidence was faked. None of that came up in trial because they didn't have DNA evidence. They had his confession. That's all you need. Yeah, they're allowed to. If a police officer couldn't lie, they couldn't go undercover. Why? But he shouldn't confess. Yeah. Oh, you've just identified a real problem in the criminal justice system. Yes, that is absolutely true. This is why you don't say anything until you have a lawyer present. And our system is very biased towards confessions. Yeah. No. You were absolutely right, I think, in your outrage. But it's a thing that happens. Michael, you were next, and then you were next. Yep. No. Because they didn't harass you. They had reasonable grounds to arrest you. They arrested you, and then they let you go later after you were cleared. There's a gentleman in Newfoundland who is in jail for murder for like 50 years. Murdered someone as a young man. Eventually, with the there's a variety of innocence projects out that will take DNA evidence and use it on old cases. And he was freed because the DNA evidence conclusively showed that he was not the murderer. So they let him go. He did not get an apology, and he tried to sue, and he could get no money because the criminal justice system made no mistakes in the prosecution. To show that you deserve something, you have to show that a mistake was made. The evidence was still all there. So, for example, I live you're walking by Privet House, and you hear me yell, at my spouse, I'm going to kill you for that. The next day, she's found dead. You testify in court that you heard me say that. When paramedics arrived on the scene, I was over her body with a knife in my hand, and blood was dripping from it. It was definitely hers. I had cut myself in the process. My blood is mixed with hers. It's horribly graphic. Bad things happened. I go to jail. Now, my story is, and I'm going to say this is the true story. I was coming home. I opened the door, and I saw my wife dead. I rushed in without thinking, because I'm not a paramedic, and pulled out the knife, and that's when the police arrived. You heard me say I'm going to kill you, but we were just playing Halo co-op. And so it was, yelling because she was beating me, and it was in good fun. So there was nothing there. But if I was convicted, I would not have any grounds to sue the prosecutors or the Canadian government or the Queen, who is actually the Canadian government, because there was no mistake. You testified. You saw what you thought was true. The conclusion was just wrong from the premise. It's not like someone cheated to convict me. I was convicted on very reasonable grounds. Beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't mean there's never any doubt. Just means reasonable doubt. Have I asked you yet? Yeah. 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 They can't lie in court. They can say, however, we had probable cause because we saw a bottle of clear liquid that I could smell alcohol coming from your car. So we decided to do a more extensive search. No, they can't lie in court. Yeah. They're sworn in, and then they're telling the truth. But they can lie to you. They can say, I clocked you at going 120, and they didn't clock you at all. The radar wasn't even turned on. You go, yeah, I was, and then boom, you just confessed. And then when they're on the stand, the judge will say, like, no, my radar machine wasn't working. But when I asked them if they were going 120, they said yes. Yeah. Yeah. If you were ever stopped by a police officer and they're asking if they can search your bag, you say no. They're asking you. And if you have no reason, because remember, and by the way, I'm not saying that police officers are all bad or anything. I'm just saying, if you're guilty, please confess. If there's bad things in your bag, let them look. Because then we want you to go to jail. But if you're innocent, there's no point. Because you don't know what the consequences of that will be, or what they're even investigating. Yeah. 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 That's the entire criminal justice system. Even in Canada, where we don't have the death penalty, you will get a lower sentence for confessing to a crime. It's called a plea bargain. than you will if you go through the course. At least that's what they'll offer. They'll say if you go to trial, this is what we're going to charge you with, and this is the sentencing we're going to ask for. But if you confess now and save us this time and energy, we're going to sentence you to this level. Yeah, well, no, it's called efficiency. The criminals just confess to their crimes, and then we punish them for it. What? Are you saying that there is a flaw in the foundations of our democracy? I don't know what to think anymore. That's just terrible. Yes? Can you what? Yeah. Oh, that I wouldn't recommend that. Really wouldn't recommend that. You were on the stand, and you're being cross-examined, or no, you're just talking to the police, and you're like, they're investigating a murder because a friend of a friend of a friend died in a different city, San Diego. You're in Canada. You've never, you're like, I don't know. I wasn't in San Diego. I didn't go to San Diego over Thanksgiving. I have never been to San Diego in my life. You are now so messed up because you lied. You were in San Diego 2 years ago visiting your friend. Now, it doesn't matter. There's no way you committed the murder because that was 2 years ago and they were alive. They only got killed this last Thanksgiving. However, you just lied to a police officer. Now they can say you're a dishonest person. If you go on the stand, they can tell the jury you lied about where you were. You said you'd never been to San Diego. You had. Maybe you were planning something. You've now just become a much more interesting person in terms of who killed them, because why are you lying? Police officers are like regular people. They get tunnel vision because if they find something that seems suspicious, they're going to work that up. Now, it might be that you're cleared later, or it might turn out that, you weren't at San Diego, but your best friend was, and they borrowed the car, and they find the receipt. And now they have evidence that your car was in San Diego. And you weren't, but you only say you weren't, and now you're a known liar. So yeah, lying to the police is it is best not to say anything. Last one, because this is such a weird side effect. Yeah, and I don't want to to let the class get in the way of your education, but we do have to go back to the class in a moment. Yes. Oh, they can't fabricate evidence. They can just lie to you. Yeah.
But if they lie to you and how you can confess to something that you didn't do, and then wait, okay, it's been the question has been in my head so long, I
Okay.
so can I ask it later?
Sure. I think one of the things that you should be aware of as people growing up in a society, we're in a society, is that confessions are taken extremely seriously in our particular justice system. And there is this old idea that nobody would confess to a crime they didn't commit. We know that's false. Psychologists have now been studying it for these years. People falsely confess to crimes they didn't commit all the time, sometimes for fun, because there are weird people who like getting put in jail and going through the process. So this idea is wrong, but it is strongly entrenched in our system. If you confess to anything, that trumps any amount of evidence. You confessed. They don't have to work after that. Well, it's your parents' fault. Well, who makes up society? And who can vote? So it hasn't been changed because people haven't changed it. So, guess what your job is? To fix all the wrongs that are still present in society. Yeah. Yeah. If you could tackle climate change right away, I would be really encouraged. Yeah. We left that one for you. Yeah.
So if the
No.
So they can
In fact,
wrongly
no, no,
convict people.
you did something wrong. When you confessed, you lied.
But they lied too.
Yeah, but they're allowed to, undercover. Or just, trying to gather evidence. Everybody understands that criminals lie, and you lied in your confession. You're not telling us you're a liar. Why should we believe you now that you're undoing your confession? You lied before. Why aren't you lying now? Oh, but remember, you have to convince people, like a jury, if you're lucky, or just the judge. Actually, sometimes the judge is better. That now that you're a trustworthy person, you've already admitted to lying in your confession. Why should they trust you? No, I know your point. Like your point is like, but the police lied, and I'm like, yeah, but that's their job. That's literally their job.
But like the first one, if you never confessed and you never lied, and like you proved that they like, and then the police like that they lied and that they wrongly
No. Back up though. You said you proved to whom? The police. The police aren't on trial. You are. The only thing you're trying to prove is your innocence. That's the only thing that matters. Well, and they're trying to prove your guilt.
So the police, like, I mean, I know, like, everything's, like, corrupt and it's all messed up, but, like, in, like,
No, this isn't corrupt. This is working exactly as designed.
just, like, the law, like, allows them to wrongly convict people as much as they want and they never get punished, even if they never.
No. I mean, yes. I mean, that's an interpretation. But you confessed to the crime. They didn't wrongly convict you. They rightfully convict you. You confessed. Obviously, you're guilty.
But they told.
Well, yeah, and you did what you were told. That's a good criminal. Thank you. I think we all learned something today, and I am now going to move on. There's a video maybe I'll bring out next day that sometimes I show. Does anybody still need this on the board? This is about the cause and effect explanation, and why one is an argument and one is not, and I think we've done that. Let's do that with this one. Patrick Lawler, by the way, very famous person. This actually happened, and if you take psychology, you will hear his name mentioned. He had a 4-inch railway spike put through his brain. It went right into his head, destroyed his frontal lobes. They took it out. He was fine. He could walk, talk, breathe, and seemed to suffer no ill effects in that he could still, like, get up, dress himself, have conversations with people. However, he was a model employee, always on time, never drank, smoked, swore. He was like wonderful person apparently. After the 4-inch nail was in his brain, he became itinerant. He couldn't hold down his job. He'd never show up on time. He argued with anyone and everyone and swore all the time. It's mentioned because that's how he started to learn what the frontal lobes are for. They're for all your ability to enact civilized behavior and a lot of your higher functioning, planning ahead, that sort of thing. So that's why I've just used his name. Patrick Lawler had a world-class toothache because he had a 4-inch nail in his brain. Patrick Lawler should have carried insurance because now he can't pay his bills. Which one of these is an argument and which is an explanation? Let's ask Lucia. The first one is an explanation or an argument? So because is so this is the premise, that's the conclusion. You're saying he had a 4-inch nail in his brain, therefore he has a world-class toothache. Patrick Lawler should have, so let's take it out. This would be the premise, this would be the conclusion. Now he can't pay his bills, therefore he should have carried insurance. And you're saying this one is the argument? And this one is the explanation. Any agreements or disagreements? Yes, Michael? I think your hand was first. Why do you think it's the other way around? Or do you just sense it the way it is? It seems to make more sense? Yep. Yes, that's a fact.
But the other one, you should have, like, some may think that you should carry insurance, but some may don't.
Yeah. I think that articulates it well. It is actually the other way around. These are a little bit tricky. And if you can't read it, it's even more tricky. Because we have explanation and argument, and they sound exactly the same. But I like the way you phrase that. That he had a 4-inch nail in his brain is not in doubt. So if he had a 4-inch nail in his brain, therefore he had a world-class toothache, just seems like an odd argument to make. Like a conclusion. And toothache itself also seems like a factual thing. Whereas should have carried insurance, and I think the word should here does a lot of work for that. It's picking things up and saying, pay attention to me. This seems to be some sort of judgment, either moral or economic, about carrying insurance, because now he can't pay his bills. You should always be aware of what future disasters health-wise are going to follow you so that you can get the right insurance beforehand. If I've learned anything watching American medical shows. Okay. There's a railway tie. He was a railway worker, so just a work accident. Yeah. And then he got fired. Nope. That's the same thing we did. That he had a toothache is also not in doubt. Is an argument, as he had 4-inch nail in his brain is given as a reason he is a careless worker. Offering an explanation why you didn't do your homework is not an argument why you shouldn't have had to do your homework. This is another common one I experience. Now, next one is, what time does this class end? 45? I think we'll just start. Someone announced it was halfway, and we didn't get up and stretch. And I just stood up. I highly recommend everybody get up and stretch. And I've got a couple of videos for you. And they're a bit long, so give you a minute or two. Yeah. I should have been more careful with my mouse. Argument or explanation? Argument. Is it still working? Yes, it's still working. Okay. No, I want you to open it in a different window. Okay, I'm going to let you watch these two videos. One's 7 minutes long, one's 4 minutes long. In a minute, I'll post them. And then I want you to pull this out. Give an argument from one of the videos, give an argument from the other video, and I want you to identify the premise and the conclusion, which video is better. Now, I used to have, these are not the two original videos. I used to have one I picked organic because we're discussing the natural law fallacy. Because things are natural, things are better. And I think this comes up a lot with organic. Because it's organic, it just feels more natural, which is not an argument towards whether or not it's good. It's literally one of the fallacies. And I used to have one that was like pro-organic and anti-organic. And it's not really anti, it's just this gentleman goes through all the reasons why, in terms of the scientific research, organic food and conventionally grown food have the exact same nutrition. And the anti one that said organic food was better, I was criticized by the class because they said it was unfair because he looked so silly because he clearly didn't have very good arguments. And I can't find one where I can point to it and say they've got great arguments. Because when they go through the science, it didn't. And I couldn't find one that didn't meet that criticism, so I'm going to add one. If you can find one that you're like, Mr. Neufeld, these two paired together would be great. A pro-organic one is one that I'm missing. I did find one that said organic food is better, but only because it makes the food taste better if you think it's organic. In the same way that if you have like coffee beans, and you know the person tells you these were hand-picked on the mounts of the Himalayas, and then they were eaten by cats who then digested them through their system, and then they carefully washed them, and then they hired a series of chimpanzees who were forced into slave labor to bring them down the mountain, and all this human suffering and misery went to bring you the beans, and then you drink the beans, and they're like, this tastes so much better. And that is a true thing. If you know the person went to a lot of work to make the meal, there are studies that show the meal tastes better. So if you tell someone your ingredients are organic, the meal will literally taste better than if they know it's not. Their belief matters. But I thought that video didn't weigh in the same kind of way, so I didn't include that one. If you come up with a better one, that's great. And I will have a different pairing in the future because both of them are saying mostly the same kind of thing. But he's he writes for the New York Times as his doctor. He's their medical expert, very well informed. This is just a science YouTuber who likes to talk about things. And then he ends up in much the same place. ASAP Science is pretty good, but not at the same kind of level as he is. So I thought that would be a different kind of one. If you come up with a better video that you want to use on organic food, that'd be great. And you're allowed to do so. Any questions? Yes? Doing this, what time is this class over? I intended to give you about 25 minutes to do it in class, and then we talked for a really long time and got to here now. If you have any homework that's not done, I've gotten a couple more today, going to mark those. Of course, my reflection and feedback to your parents for the thing that you filled out today is due. Get that in if you haven't yet already. I'm going to start going through those and emailing you if they're not in. How much of this for homework? I would say at least have that done for next day. An argument from each video with a premise and a conclusion. And then I want to ask because I want to ask you what premises and conclusions did you come up with so we can talk about identifying those things. And then I'll say 3 and 4 for the next day. Pardon? It's about to be, because I'm going to assign it now. You didn't see it beforehand. And this one that just popped up, that's this sheet. You can ignore it just because it was an assignment, but I'm about to put marks in, and I had to put it on there so that you can get your mark back and see who hasn't handed it in yet. So for the last 5 minutes, you could at least start watching one of the videos. One of them is literally, I think, 5 minutes long or 6 minutes long.